And welcome back to Game on Vegas, the #1 sports show here in town. And that's because we are lucky enough to have some of the #1 guests here in Las Vegas on this show. And tonight we are thrilled to have the Pulitzer Prize nominated author Jerry Izenberg on the show. And Jerry, thank you so much. You've been here in Las Vegas now a dozen years. We appreciate you spending some time with us. What a thrill it is, because we talk about so many things with you. And one of the first things that comes to mind is you are one of only just a few that have been to every single Super Bowl.
Yeah, there are 2 daily newspaper writers left, and we refuse to die, and someone's got to turn the lights out anyway, so there it is.
But I mean, what an honor that is to have seen from 1 all the way through the 50s, and now what is it going to be, 54?
Yeah.
It's just amazing that well, I guess you've seen the game change tremendously throughout the years.
Of course it has. That's why you can't pick the best of this or the best of that. You have to go by eras. The game is different, the people are different, the ownership is different. The only thing that remains the same, except it keeps going up, is the money.
Yeah, the money keeps going up. Let's go back to that Super Bowl #1. We have some highlights of that #1. I want to kind of just get your feelings and thoughts on what that meant to the league and to the NFL and to sports writers who covered that very first game.
Well, you know, the Super Bowl I was not the big success. It was not sold out. It was in the $10 ticket. It was in the Los Angeles Coliseum. But there was a lot of excitement because in those days you really had an AFL-NFL rivalry. The fans would fight each other, and you know, now they just fight because they're drunk. But then they fought because they cared. And Kansas City gave Lombardi a pretty good, tough first half, and then the animals broke loose, and it was a nightmare. But I got to tell you this: you see these guys get gazillion dollars for playing it. Right, first Super Bowl. I'm having lunch 2 days before with the beast, Holub, E.J. Holub, which you couldn't get near today. The Gestapo's everywhere. You know. And the first 6 years, we could talk to them in their rooms or whatever. All right, so we're having lunch in this coffee shop in Long Beach. And I'm asking him how he feels about it. I was a kid. I was 37. I didn't know anything. And he said, look, feel my hands. And his palms are sweating. So Jerk says, well, is that because now you're going to prove you belong? He said, no, if we win this game, we get $15,000 each. My wife has already spent it.
Great story. Bart, Starr versus Len Dawson, right?
Absolutely.
Vince Lombardi and Hank Stram. After the game, did you talk to both coaches?
I talked to everybody.
How was, I mean, Vince Lombardi, I'm so many people in today's era would love to have met Vince Lombardi.
Well, Lombardi was a good friend of mine because he had been the backfield coach with the Giants. I was at the Starr later. I also knew him when he was at West Point. And he really didn't like the media in Wisconsin. It's his way, crapped all over them. They were terrified of him. And he didn't like that either. He wanted you to fight him. So when we would come, when they would play Green Bay out there, we were there. Nobody else was there. And he and I would have fights. The big rivalry then was Baltimore and Green Bay. And they play a game, a very important game. Bart Starr is hurt. Paul Hornung is hurt. Elijah Pitts is hurt. So you got these 3. Zeke Bartkowski, who was about 107 years old then, he's the quarterback of the The game ends, and I'm looking at, and I got to catch a plane. And I'm looking at these guys, they're scared stiff for Lombardi. I can't wait around. I said, hey, you ever think you'd have to coach a game without these 3 guys? He looks at me and he says, that's a stupid question, mister. Because the thing about Lombardi is, when he won, he was worse than when he lost. Because when he won, he was still in the game, and he couldn't cool down. So that's a stupid question. I said, well, I think you coach a pretty stupid game. Now, the walls of this little dressing room in Milwaukee all move in because everybody is inhaling, you know. And he says, well, what the hell do you know about football? I said, what the hell do you know about journalism? Okay, so he answered the question. Tuesday, the phone rings. He never identifies himself. He had that voice. He never identified himself when he called. Tuesday, the phone rings. He says, listen, I think I might have been a little out of line on Sunday. So I say, who is this? And he said, this is Vince. I said, Vince? Vince who? He says, Vince Lombardi, and don't get smarter. I'm not going to give you any more apologies. He argued with me once about a book I wrote. I wrote a book called The Rivals. And Vince was born, raised Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn Dodger, you know, right to the gut. And there was a chapter in there about the rivalry between the Dodgers and the Giants when it was real, not what it is now. and how a guy shot shot a guy in a bar. He killed him. They were arguing about Bill Posdell. Was he a good relief pitcher? Was he a bad? Anyway, Lombardi goes nuts. He calls me and says, "That's a great book." I said, "Vince, it's a good book." He said, "No, it's a great book." I said, "Vince, it's a good book." And he says, "I'm telling you, don't argue with me because I read it." And I said, "Why are you going to argue with me? I wrote it."
Let's go from, those are great stories. Let's go from Super Bowl I to Super Bowl III. That's the Jets and the Colts. That was the big Joe Namath guarantee game,
yep,
right?
And everybody thought that's the game that changed the Super Bowl. I do not believe that to this day. The game that changed the Super Bowl was Super Bowl IV because Kansas City proved against Minnesota that it wasn't a fluke. Because they were so desperate, they were thinking of changing the Super Bowl format. They were thinking of best 4 teams playing the best football at that time. And Namath's victory changed that. I'll tell you something about Super Bowl III, though. Weave Eubank told me a story. He said, I don't know what to tell these guys. He said, I knew we were going to win. He, meaning Namath, got everybody so stirred up. The players thought they were going to. Dave Herman was in a hotel room. I let them bring their wives, and she brought the infant baby. The baby we had to go against Bubba Smith. And she kept saying, "You're going to get hurt. I don't want you to play in this game." And he said, he told me, "Let me tell you something. I'm with a screaming baby for 5 nights, a wife that doesn't want me to play, and I got to worry about Bubba." I couldn't wait to get out of that room. Anyway, at the same time, I said to her, "What did you tell these guys? What did you, was it a Newt Rockney talk or what?" He said, "All I did was I said, we've done everything. I've told them everything. I did the best I could do. I told them a dirty joke, and they went out laughing."
That's great. Now, you've written, I believe, is it 13, 16
no,
books?
It's 15.
15 books.
15 nonfictions.
15 nonfiction, and some of those football books, we can throw those up there. What was probably one of your most favorite books that you wrote about football?
Well, the most important one, I think, was No Medals for Trying. It was 8 days in the week, actually 9 days, in the week of the New York Football Giants. But it wasn't like other books that have been done like that, because I had the coaching staff and Parcells grudging commission to tape anything in the coaching meetings and to talk to any assistant coaches, which was anathema to him. I had the players, I had them anyway. The owners were feuding for ownership of the team. And one insisted, if you're going to use him, you're going to use me. So I had them. It was the book covered 8 days. I wrote the book. I said, if I could take all summer, which I could, my contract, it'd be a different book. I wrote the book in 15 days saying it's got to be as frenetic, the writing has got to be as frenetic as the game was. And what the fortunate part was I studied that game afterwards, and I went to the things that he talked about in the coaches' meetings and whatever else. And those are the things I feature in the book, because you're reading and say, oh, they catch the punch, right? That's what he said to me. But they didn't catch the punt, and that's why they lost the game. So I think that book showed people what it's like. It also gave you the insight of 2 football teammates who were roommates, Jumbo Elliott and Eric Howard, the great offensive tackle and the nose guard. The sloppiest football players who ever lived. Their apartment is described, it's that high with pizza boxes and delivery things, and I said, I don't know how you guys could play it. Do you ever get upset stomachs? And I got to tell you a quick Super Bowl story. Giants, Buffalo. He knows the only way he can win it, he being Parcells, he's got to keep the ball. Got to keep the ball. He knows, and he admits to me, cannot match up with the Bills. Offensively, his defense has got to just keep them off the field. His offense can't overwhelm them. You know, it's a 1-point game. So he's driving the bus to the last work, and all of a sudden, 2 days before the thing, he says, I want full pads today, guys. Everybody looks at each other. Full pads, 2 days before the Super Bowl. He said, yours not the question, right? Full pads. They're on the bus, and he always, you always sit in the coach, any team, any sport, always sits in first row by the window. He calls, hey, Taylor, come here. Lawrence Taylor sits down. He says, listen, I want you to do something today. And don't ask me why. He said, well, Bill, anything you want. What do you want me to do? I want you to punch Elliott in the face. I want you to start a fight. He said, well, can you do it or not? Oh, Bill, I'll do it for you. Besides, it was like giving my first wife a valid credit card. He couldn't wait. They blow the whistle, bang, he catches Elliott. Elliott looks at him, Elliott jumps on. Now they're rolling around the ground fighting. And Belichick, who, he is the original nervous Nelly, comes running over. We got to do something, Bill. What are we going to do? We got to stop it. Yeah, I think we should stop it. Don't you? Yeah. Oh, let's ask the guy. You think we should stop it? And finally, he stops it. He felt that Elliott had been too casual all week. Elliott played the game of his life in that Super Bowl.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great story. Let's move from football to boxing. You've seen some great boxing matches, Jerry, through the years. And was the Thrilla in Manila probably your top fight?
It was a fight. I love boxing. I had a brief boxing career as an amateur. 3 fights, knocked out twice.
Yeah.
The third time, the guy said, "You're leaving this gym. You go play baseball again." I said, "Well, I'm not leaving until I win a fight." So he said, "There's one guy here I can put you in with, but I don't know. Personally, I still think they gave it to me." But he raised my hand with his right hand. He pointed to the door with his other hand. That was the end of my boxing career. But yeah, thousands of fights. Great undercard fights that nobody ever cared about, but they were great fights. The Thriller in Manila was so emotional. Now, Ali was my friend for 50 years, and Joe was my friend for a long, long time. I had no nickel in that quarter as far as who I wanted to win. But, and it's a very big but, the 14th round, leading up to it, it was a fight like a Wall Street graph. No knockdowns. Greatest fight I ever saw. No knockdowns. Ali almost knocked him out in the second round. Joe comes back with a right hand that Ali said you didn't have, which they taught him before the fight. He hits him, and suddenly Ali goes down to here in the graph. And Ali said, "You're an old man. You got no right hand." He said, "Go ask George Benton." Bing, and he hit him with another one. Now it's an even fight to the middle rounds. Now, Ali's jab is winning the fight because God decided to fight. Anatomy does. Joe was a short guy. When Joe would throw that left hook, it had nothing to do with Joe. It was a living, breathing creature, Philadelphia left hook. I mean, it had a will of its own, and when it wanted to go, and he could triple up on the left hook. I never saw anybody who could do that, not even Henry Armstrong. Anyway, they get to it's the 13th or 14th round, and they're dead on their feet. I'm thinking 13th round. Ali is that close to Frazier. Frazier's arms are down. His legs look like wet spaghetti. And all Ali has to do is walk 3 feet, push him, fight over. Ali couldn't walk the 3 feet. And I said to myself, Lord, I don't care who wins this fight. Send us all home, because someone's got to get hurt, and it's just easy. This fight should not have a loser.
Right.
And before the 14th round, they cut the gloves off, showing what happened. And I remember writing my lead that night, and I had to go fast. Ali had come down the aisle, leaned over, and said to us, "This is the closest you'll ever see to death." And I told him later, I don't want to see it any closer. I sat down to write my lead. What are you going to write about a fight like that? So I said, this fight was not for the WBC Heavyweight Championship. This fight was not even for the championship of the planet. This fight was for the championship of each other, because they made each other even better. They could have fought in a phone booth on a melting ice floe. Great fight.
Yeah. Great fight. We go from the great fight probably to one of the, what do you say to the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather fight?
Give me my money back if I were a fan. It was terrible. A lot of things happened in that fight that people don't know about. You know about the torn rotator cuff, and you know that he wanted to take an approved shot, and the commission said, well, you didn't ask us before. They wouldn't let him take it. I had to look. There'll never be a better defensive fighter at any weight than Floyd Mayweather, because he was always in position. His defense was his offense. Always, when you miss a punch, you're off balance. He was ready to throw the punch. But I will say this town moves on money. And I know they won't like this down at the commission, but I truthfully believe if Mayweather said, I have to have this shot, same shot approved, he'd have gotten it. Because Floyd put some money in town.
Yeah.
And he did. I mean, Pacquiao, I think two years earlier, Pacquiao beats him, and beats him by a big margin. In this fight, it went according to their skills at that point.
One of the great books that you have written, Jerry, was the Once They Were Giants, because in fact, we did a story with you a while back where you were saying, boy, at one time when you were the heavyweight champion of the world, you were really the king of the world, weren't you?
Well, you were the king of the world, and to go a step further with that, your promoter was the king of the world. If you had the heavyweight champion, you had all the champions, you had the Garden. The promotional hands changed at the Garden when the heavyweight title changed. It was an incredible thing. We've had great ones. We had a great one here in this town in Mike Tyson. There've been so many, and I've been blessed with that. This was really a great year great era for champions. People thought, well, they don't know that there were champions who ducked fighters a long time ago. Joe Louis, who, in my opinion, is the best heavyweight ever lived. Joe Louis ducked a guy named Alonzo Pack, who could come in here and put his fist right through that monitor, and the monitor wouldn't come up for seconds. Well, Louis, so he made Pack his policeman. They got to fight you. If they can beat you, I'll fight them. So there's always a lot of that. But Ali, and Frazier and I were close. I really had great respect for him. And honestly, you'll find, if somebody reads the book, you will find the real insight on the making of that fight. How the keeping Ali's, taking Ali's license away, Joe wanted to fight him, they wouldn't let him, all these things happening. It's very instructive. But that fight, to me, there is no other fight. I mean, if you want it, what is the... Boxing is at once the most cruel, brutal, beautiful ballet you will ever see in sports. And I know I'm contradicting myself. Well, a lot of people say I always do that, but I'm doing it in this case deliberately.
Yeah.
Tremendous. But I got to tell you, when you say, what does it mean to be the heavyweight champion? Now, I'm through everything with Ali. I'm through, he wins the gold medal in Rome, I'm there. He wins the championship with Sonny, I'm there. All these things, and we're going to run out of time, so I'm not going to give you a million stories, but I'm giving you two stories about Ali. The first one, I'm going to give you a second one, is afterward. That's when he fights Holmes, shouldn't have fought Holmes. I go to his room. He says, you don't think I can win? Well, that's the basis we were on. He rips his shirt open. He said, now what do you think? And it was eerie. He looked like he looked the night he fought List in the first round. What I didn't know is he was on diuretics. He could not lift his arms. After that fight, I went out and I wrote, and by the way, I got to tell you, I disgraced myself in that fight. I really did. Did something nobody in my position, me and you in your position, should not do. The sixth round, I jumped up and I yelled at Richard, stop the fight. You're going to get him killed. And then I realized what I had done. I sat down. I was embarrassed. And nobody is going to stop a Muhammad Ali. Everybody thinks Angelo Dundee stopped. He didn't stop that fight. Herbert Muhammad, sitting in the 8th row, got a gopher. Herbert was the manager, and said, get down to ringside and you say, the fight stops now. I say so. That's what stopped the fight. Anyway, the fight's over, and I'm saying, well, he shouldn't go out like this. He shouldn't be remembered like this. And Holmes held back a lot. He didn't want to hurt him. Anyway, I'm walking around, and I'm in the casino. Caesars, I gamble, I lose. And I'm thinking about this. I gamble, I lose a little bit more. And I'm getting pissed off. I walk into the men's room. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and an elderly Afro-American gentleman is handing out towels. And I got to describe this guy. He was old. Now today, I would say this guy about my age, but then he seemed to me to be an ancient man. His face to me looked like an aerial map of the Burma Road with all the scars and everything. Hands me a towel, sir. I said, yeah, can I ask you a question? And he says, yeah, go ahead. Did you bet on this fight? He said, of course I bet on this fight. I said, who did you bet for? He looked me in the eye, a great eulogy for Ali, and he said, I bet on the man who gave me dignity. And there's one more outline on this I got to give you. He wins the fight in Zaire, right? That's a whole show one night if you're interested. I mean, everything went wrong in Zaire. Now he wins the fight. He heads back to the hotel. Well, it wasn't a hotel, it was a military prison he was living in. And I said to Dave Anderson, the skies open up. It's an African torrential rain thing. They could not have fought had it happened an hour earlier. And I look at Anderson, sun comes out now, which it always does in Africa. I said, you know what? Let's go find him. He said, well, yeah, I don't know. I said, let me tell you something. Because it was 4 in the morning, Zaire time, because of the satellite. I said, look, I think I know where to find him. I'm not happy with what I wrote. I want to see him after the fight. So he agrees. He said, well, where are we going to look? I said, in the 30,000-acre military reservation. We'll go to the river. He will be by the Congo River. That's Ali, I'm sure. We go to the Congo River. There's a rise, a little hillock, not a hill, but you know, we're standing on that. He can't see us. His back is to us. There's nobody else there. So whatever he does, he's doing for Ali. He's not performing. He's not. And one of the few times you'll see him, he looks across the Congo. He looks across. Suddenly, hands go in the air just like that in the Rocky pose. Well, I call it the Ali pose. Rocky pose is a disgrace. So anyway, he's got his hands up in the air, and he's staring across the river. We don't know if he's yelling or saying. Puts him down, turns. He sees us as he turns up, and he says to me, fellas, you'll never know what tonight meant to me, and I can't explain it to you because you won't understand it. And then I think back, and people say, well, how do you remember him? You know, this fight, that fight. I don't remember my fights. I remember him standing by that river, arms in the air, reaching toward heaven, and in that moment, he was the king of the world.
Yeah, that's a great story, great story. Jerry, you've written countless articles, countless columns, books.
Lined countless garbage pails with those articles.
And before we let you go, you've got a project that you're wrapping up right now. Tell us about that.
Well, after 16 or 15 nonfiction books, I decided I was going to write my first novel. I've already written a play, so let's try the novel. I finished it. It's called After the Fire. It's based on the riots in Newark, New Jersey. There's very little sports in it. It delineates the deaths, the animosity, everything else. The Irish, the Jews, the Polish, the Germans pretty much left the city after the riots because it looked like we're going to have another one. And now the city there's only 3 major ethnic groups. The Portuguese, who stay in their own ward, don't like the big city. They got a Portuguese language television station. They stay down here. Now it's the blacks and the Italians fighting politically and sometimes more than that for control of the city. That's a theme through here.
Oh, yeah. Then
I learned that you can't libel anybody who's dead. So I took 3 mafiosos that I knew pretty well, Carlo Gambino, Richie the Boot Biardo, and I didn't know Frank Costello that well, but he was with Gambino. I took them, put them in the book. They're going to fix the election for mayor. That's part of the plot. And the glue that holds the entire book together, a love affair between a black college girl and an Italian college boy at Montclair State University. They couldn't walk down the streets in Newark holding hands. That's how bad it was at that time. And their triumph over that and how the triumph is, that's the plot that keeps on giving.
Oh, yeah. What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is After the Fire.
After the Fire.
And remember, there was a Negro. He was a Negro then because he was a slave. Guy who tried to interpret the Bible for his fellow slaves. And he wrote a thing that James Baldwin used to name his book after. Noah gave us the rainbow sign, this time fire. Let me try it again. Noah gave us the rainbow sign, this time water, fire next time. Oh. And this is After the Fire.
Yeah, very nice. Well, boy, you've done everything.
No, not everything yet.
What would you like to do that you haven't done?
Well, a couple of things. I'd like to father another child at 89. Your
wife over here is laughing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
She can laugh. She can afford to. And I want to do one more thing. I'm going to do a compendium. See, I did a short story, a play for the one-act play Festival in Louisville, and I withdrew it. Got great reviews. We had SAG, union actors read it and got great reviews in 2 readings. It was a boxing novel called Where Is Everybody? A guy wins 18, and it's true, it's a late deceased friend of mine, wins 18 fights, he's a teenager, the world is his, and then they put him in with a guy who has tattoos before people had tattoos. and the guy's 38 and he's 18, and it's a nightmare. And Arthur McCanty, who refereed that fight, leans in and he says, "Roger, I'm stopping it." And Roger looked at me and said, "Arthur, I ain't arguing." And he passes out in the dressing room. He wakes up, the Hibernian Society band isn't there, the back slappers, right? Nobody is there but the grocery store guy that he has a part-time job for, and the manager and me. And he says, "Bobby," to the manager, "Bobby, where is everybody?" And Bobby says, "Roger, everybody is here." That was my boxing play. I want to do a baseball play called The Chosen, in which I use the Newark Eagles or the Negro National League locker room as a setting. Everybody thinks they're going to be the Jackie Robinson. They're fighting each other. They're not. And the third one will be a football show of some kind, and I want to call it the Jockstrap Trilogy. If I can do that, I'd be happy.
Oh, yeah. Any movies or television-type screenplays? Or?
I wrote a screenplay about The Fire Next Time. That's how it started 30 years ago.
Okay.
I looked at it and I said, "This is terrible." I said, "I'm going to make it a novel," and that's that.
There you go. Jerry, it's been a pleasure having you.
Listen, anytime.
No, I appreciate that
so much.
Listen,
people went out of the room, I talk so much, you know.
This has been fabulous. I appreciate it. Hey.